It's your first day. You arrive at a new agency and you sit down and there is a file put on your desk and you are greeted by the HR administrator who says, Andrew, welcome to this large corporate organization. Here is your onboarding file. You need to go through this, read through this, and we're going to give you the first week to get up to speed. We're going to schedule a call or a meeting with you midweek, and then at the end of the week, we're going to chat through, the things within, and we'll do a bit of a session, just talking you through the file and everything on there. But we're going to give you the first month, essentially, to get up to speed. 4 weeks to learn, the processes, to learn what's expected of you, to learn how to, navigate the organization, to understand your line management, to understand the tools that you're using, to log into all the tools, to get all your passwords set up. We are going to allow your nervous system to relax as you just come into a state of learning. For the next period of time, whether it's 2 weeks to a month, you are going to get up to speed and we are not going to put pressure on you. This is how I was inducted into PPC. I didn't know PPC. I thought I knew PPC. I didn't know PPC. I joined a large global agency that probably has one of the most phenomenal onboarding processes I've ever seen. And it makes them, grow to where they are today. But good onboarding cannot be beaten. Like, if you want to have a high performance agency, if you want to grow and you want to scale, the secret that a lot of people aren't talking around is having phenomenal onboarding. The quicker you get people up to speed, the longer they'll stay with you, the more they'll be aligned, there's higher levels of clarity. You make that first impression that you are organized and that they're going to, fit in to an ecosystem. You're going to create conformity, you're going to create culture. This is how the Roman Empire took over the world. It works. Like, having a clear onboarding process is key. I was trained, I was tested, upskilled, and given freedom to learn. Coming in from pretty much junior level to, adding value within 6 months. The scale up period and the point towards adding value increases so much quicker when your onboarding is done well. The harder the onboarding, the easier it is later. Doing things upfront correctly ensures that there's alignment of expectations and that everyone is on the same page. So this is important. I can't stress this enough. If you are having, challenges with hires, you feel like you don't know what you're paying people for, you feel like there's a misalignment, I can guarantee you, if we jump on a call and go through your onboarding process, you are going to admit that it's not correct. You're going to admit that you could improve. You're going to admit that there's, things that could be clearer and, like, you are the founder or the director of this company. You need to take responsibility for the onboarding. If you want your people to deliver at a high level, then onboarding is your thing. You have to get it right. And if you do that, you will see a drastic output in, the new hires that you make once you've improved an onboarding process. You can almost A/B test them compared to the previous hires who didn't have that and see that maybe it's a slower start, but then the ramp up that they have, the curve of them adding value increases drastically from that point of view. So let's just talk around best practices on, moving forward. Firstly, you want to give access to things. You want to give visibility. And when I say access and visibility, I mean, they need to know why the company exists. They need to know what the financial targets are, what the outcomes are, and then you as the manager need to define exactly where they fit in. You say, this is the big picture, this is where we're going, this is the 1 year plan, let's maybe not talk 5 year. And once you have that all lined and outlined and clear, and I hired you so that you can fit into this role, and within this role I want to give you as much access and as much freedom to hit this specific outcome. And if you see that there are processes or things around that need to be improved, come and chat to me. But your responsibility is this one thing in this bigger ecosystem. You are not responsible for the profitability of the agency. You are not responsible for the retention of our clients. You are responsible for these particular outcomes based on your role. And if you play your part and everyone plays their part in the team, we will work together as a unit. But the success or failure of this business is not on you alone. You have a part to play. And if you can align that and have that conversation up front, and people can, communicate that back to you, communicate that I feel like these expectations are fair. I feel like this is optimistic. I feel like I can achieve the things. You're not just overloading them with some KPIs that, now they are responsible for 30% growth year on year. And if they do that, they'll get a bonus. You want to try and avoid that scenario. You want to really break it down to a point where they are in control of their destiny. They can add value regardless of the storm that's going on around them. So let's talk programs. Now, minor disclosure, I am not the most, admin friendly person. I can be a little bit scatterbrained and all over the place. So there are people out there like Ed Leak from, God's Here Ads and Agency Forge who have great templates and training processes. And many are like them in the PPC world and the PPC communities that exist today. I would highly recommend you follow their templates and you create some sort of framework that your team use. In hindsight, this was a big gap that I had, and I had high levels of expectations, on the actual work thing. I learned from, being trained at a really large agency that having a methodology, having an approach, having a way in which you do something. This is how we budget pace. This is how we build accounts. And just having that conformity allows the individual to know what success looks like. You can still have freedom outside of that to say, hey, if you're going off, chorus, if you're going to free flow, that's okay. You just need to be able to justify why you did that. But in a worst case scenario, this is the minimum. This is the minimum we accept. This is the standardized process that we have, and you need to adhere to that. Now, does that look, when we talk about onboarding, people maybe immediately think, okay, we need Monday.com. We need, teamwork. We need Trello. We need Asana. Now, we tried all of those, literally all of them. It blew my mind how quickly the team went through tools, and I gave them freedom to say, hey, choose a tool that works for you as long as you use it. Big red flag. In my experience, the best thing that worked, we reverted back to Trello. Trello was the thing we started with. The thing that works is the thing that you commit to, essentially. It's like a marriage, for lack of a better analogy. You commit to that person, you commit to that thing, and then you give it time and you work on it and you improve. We went with Trello. If you use Monday, whatever you use, just commit to it. Just say, this is it. We're not changing. We're going to make it work within this. And people can fill in the gaps where the software doesn't do certain things. If you can, create a committed culture where everyone's, rowing in the same direction, everyone's moving the boat forward, and that boat's getting speed, so much easier to tweak and move from there. But to keep changing software and to think that there's a magic bullet, we're going to find a software that's going to magically arrange the agency and, we're going to have this amazing process overnight, not going to happen. It's around what you commit to. So how do you measure success on onboarding? Well, you measure the person. You say, well, we onboarded 3 people and this is where they're at. And this was the process we used. And maybe 1 didn't make it through their probation period and 2 did. And you can say, well, previously we had a higher failure rate. So this is good. It's moving from that point of view. You ask for feedback. You listen. You say, hey, through the onboarding process, what would you like improved? What did you feel like we missed out on? What wasn't clear? And as you start gaining feedback from the team and not trying to, defensively, push back on them when they say, oh, it could have been this could have been clear. And you say, well, I wanted to leave that, I wanted some ambiguity so that you could have something to go and, add to, like, not on, you're the leader, you take responsibility for that. If they're giving you feedback on that, receive the feedback. Like, that's great. If you can improve the onboarding process, you're not going to be in that situation again next time. The next time it's going to go quicker, and eventually someone else is going to be able to do the onboarding besides you, and you're just going to see this kind of culture building momentum and going from there. The feedback piece on that is crucial. So to give someone, this kind of false picture that everything's going amazing, and leave things till the 6-month review, leave things to the 3-month review. And if you're just giving them thumbs up, over Slack or Teams and saying things are going great, and you don't raise any negative feedback, when you suddenly give them negative feedback, it's a shock. Now, we're going to go through how to do this in a later module. where we're going to unpack the sandwich versus a continuous feedback and a dual feedback loop. However, the thing here is to give consistent feedback. So I give you some good feedback, I give you some bad feedback. It's going to be regular. And the negative feedback doesn't have to be this big issue. It's just like, hey, little note here, this was done wrong. Hey, you skipped this out here. And at the same point, the good feedback needs to flow. Hey, you're doing great. Great. Just so glad to have you here today. Thanks for being on the team. Having a team around makes this thing exist. Like, be lavish on both sides. Give a lot of good feedback and give a lot of critical feedback. If you can give both, people will feel incredibly safe. They will know exactly where they stand and they won't get blindsided. Once they get blindsided, you're going to lose their confidence. You're going to lose their trust in what you're doing, and they're going to feel, yeah. Anyways, very passionate about that topic. We're going to get into it later. Let me not dive deep into that right now. So measuring onboarding success is really as simple as looking at the cohorts of people. Now, if you're hiring 1 or 2 people and the sample size is not big enough, it's very difficult to take, meaningful learnings around that. So my naive view on that is if you're hiring and it's failing, I would like to argue that you're maybe not hiring enough. If you're hiring 1 person every year and it's failing, it's probably because you're not practicing it enough. If your theory is I can't grow the agency because every person I hire fails, every time I do onboarding it fails, I would disagree with you. There are companies that have phenomenal onboarding and there are companies that keep hiring and scale. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game. So you're trying to improve your onboarding to get the numbers higher and higher and higher of success of onboarding. And to grow the agency, you often just need to hire more. We went through a year where in a 6-month period, we hired 8 people. We learned a lot through that. We learned a lot around cash flow. We learned a lot around, how to get them up to speed, how to get them equipped, what's the minimum, barrier to entry to get them adding value, because now you're sitting with this, almost more new members than existing staff. But you can't have the stop-start process the entire time where we're onboarding people and now I have to stop working and spend, 6 weeks just getting them up to speed. You need to figure out a way to do it in parallel. So the actual onboarding trainings, the things that you're going through need to be shared amongst the team. And I would even argue there's benefit in bringing outside resources, bringing in someone else to train that individual to get them up to speed, bringing in an external HR consultant. We worked with one for years. So you get someone else coming in and, helping you with performance appraisals, helping you, yes, you're outsourcing key pivotal parts of the business that need to be your responsibility, but sometimes you have to make a plan within that scenario and figure out how do we actually do this. But if you are committed to building a phenomenal onboarding process and training and identifying key members within the team who will own the onboarding process, that is not your responsibility as the owner, as the leader one day. Eventually, you will have a hiring process that doesn't involve you. You will have a hiring process that keeps improving the entire time, and you can focus on the actual growth of the business and not just onboarding people. But it is important to get this right. If you feel like you are consistently missing, with this hiring thing and you feel isolated and you're questioning how do other agencies do this, I would highly suggest you start with unpacking your onboarding process and chat to some other agency owners. Go through, Ed Leak's course, like, God Tier Ads, join Forge and start chatting to other agency owners and say, hey, this is my onboarding process. Where can I improve? Ultimately, if that thing works, you're going to be richer for it. There is no downside to having a phenomenal onboarding process. So thank you. We'll dive more into the feedback loop in a future module, and the next one coming up is going to be talking through training, the non-monetary compensation.